Daniel Cooper sat in the dim observation room of Kepler Station, staring at the old computer screens that glowed with faint blue light. Outside the metal walls, the galaxy stretched endlessly, full of stars that belonged to species he had studied his whole life. But something was wrong. Something fundamental and terrible. He had been searching the galactic archives for 3 days without sleep. His eyes felt heavy, and his hands shook from too much coffee. The station's artificial gravity hummed beneath his feet, a constant reminder that he was far from home, far from anywhere that mattered to anyone. Daniel was the ambassador of humanity at Kepler Station. It was not a grand position. The station itself was small and forgotten, tucked away on the outer edge of known space where only traders and explorers passed through. Most of them never stayed long. They came, traded their goods, and left. Nobody important ever arrived here. He had always known humans were not respected among the galactic powers. The Zrath controlled the central systems with their military strength. The Helian people managed trade routes with their advanced technology. The Varians were ancient and wise, sitting on councils that decided the fate of entire star systems. Humans were none of these things. They were small, divided, scattered across a few colonies and stations. They were tolerated but not valued. But this discovery was different. This was not about being weak or unimportant. This was about being gone. Daniel pulled up the historical database again, using the access codes that Vex, the ancient archivist, had given him. Vex was old, even by the standards of long-lived alien species. The Varians lived for thousands of years, and Vex was one of the oldest still alive. He had befriended Daniel during a routine archive check, which was unusual. Vex did not usually speak to humans. The files on the screen showed the early history of the galaxy. 8,000 years ago, when space travel was discovered, the first colonies spread across the stars. The Zrath, the Helian, the Varians, the Krull, the Centauri all developed their civilizations in the vast darkness of space. But humanity was not listed. Not even once. Daniel searched again. He searched for Earth and found nothing. He searched for human, and the database returned no results. He searched for names of human explorers he had learned about in school, and the system said they did not exist. His hands trembled as he typed. This was not possible. His mother was human. His father was human. He was standing in a human station, wearing human clothes, speaking human language. How could an entire species be missing from the records of the galaxy? He looked at the access logs. The files had been properly maintained. They were not damaged or corrupted. Someone had gone through the archives carefully and removed humanity from history. It was not an accident. It was intentional. A soft chime sounded. Vex was requesting access to the observation room. Daniel checked the time. It was very early in the station's sleep cycle. Most people were in their quarters. Daniel opened the door. The old Varian shuffled inside, his crystalline body catching the light from the screens. Vex was taller than humans, and his skin seemed to glow with an inner light. His eyes were dark and ancient and sad. "You have found something," Vex said. It was not a question. "The records," Daniel said, his voice breaking slightly. "Humans are not in the galactic archives. Not anywhere. Not in the history files. Not in the cultural records. Not in the founding documents. It is as if we never existed." Vex walked slowly to the screen and looked at the data. He did not speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was quiet and heavy. "I remember humans," Vex said. "I am old enough to remember. 200 years ago, humanity was present in the galaxy. You were young as a species, but you had courage and curiosity. You built good ships and made good friends. But then something happened. There was a meeting of the council in secret. I was not part of that meeting, but I remember when things changed. What happened? Daniel asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Humans were removed, Vex said simply. Not killed, as far as I know, but removed from our records. Your ships were reclassified as belonging to other species. Your colonies were labeled as settlements of different peoples. Your history was rewritten. And slowly, over time, everyone forgot. Even I forgot, until I found you asking questions no one should have to ask. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. It was hot and sharp. Why would they do this? Why would the Galactic Council erase an entire species? Fear, Vex said, still looking at the screens. Humans were growing too fast. You were expanding too much. You were creating technology that surprised us. And you fought hard when threatened. The Council decided that humanity was a risk to the established order. So they erased you from history instead of declaring war. It was cleaner. It was easier. That is not justice, Daniel said, his voice hard and cold. That is murder of a different kind. Vex turned to him, and Daniel saw sadness in the alien's ancient eyes. No, it is not justice. And I have carried the weight of that knowledge alone for many years. But now you know, and you must decide what to do with this truth. Before Daniel could respond, alarms began to sound across the station. Red lights flashed. An automated voice spoke in flat, calm tones. Incoming signal. Unknown origin. All personnel to stations. Daniel and Vex rushed to the communication center. The signal was coming from deep space, from a region where no ship should be traveling. It was strong and clear and unmistakably artificial. The technician on duty, a young human woman named Lucy, looked up at Daniel with confusion and fear. Sir, I cannot identify the source. It is not using any known frequency protocols, but it is definitely a transmitter. Something big. Daniel leaned over the console and listened. The signal was repeating over and over. It was broadcasting a set of coordinates, and beneath the coordinates, there was a message in an ancient code, a code so old that only the oldest military archives contained it. Daniel translated it slowly, his fingers moving across the keyboard with increasing urgency. The message contained a single name, a designation from humanity's golden age of exploration. A ship that was supposed to be lost forever. The USS Valiant. Daniel's breath caught. The Valiant was legend among humans. It was the ship that had ventured beyond known space 200 years ago, searching for new worlds where humanity could build something great. It had never returned. Everyone had assumed it was destroyed. But now it was calling out from the darkness. It was coming home. Block this signal from reaching the Galactic Council, Daniel commanded. Route it to an isolated channel. Lucy, log this under routine maintenance noise. No one needs to know about this yet. Vex stood silent beside him, his ancient face unreadable. But Daniel could sense the weight of history shifting. The past was returning. The forgotten were becoming unforgotten, and everything was about to change. Captain Laura Summers had spent 23 years in the human military, and she had learned to trust her instincts. Right now, every instinct told her that something massive was about to happen. She stood in the monitoring station deep beneath the surface of New Terra, humanity's oldest colonial world. The chamber was large and filled with ancient equipment, most of it maintained by humans since the galaxy had forgotten they existed. The walls were reinforced metal, designed to survive a nuclear blast. Laura's team was small but highly trained. Marcus Webb worked at the signal analysis station, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. He was young, barely 30, but he had a gift for reading patterns in data that others missed. Nicole Grant stood beside the medical station, which seemed out of place in a military command center until you understood that this base was built to survive anything. including biological attack. The alert had come in 2 hours ago. A signal from deep space. An old signal from a region that was not supposed to have any human presence. Laura had immediately locked down the facility and sent everyone else home. She could not risk this information spreading. "It is definitely human," Marcus said, without looking up from his screens. "The encryption pattern is old. Really old. Military standard from about 200 years ago. But it is definitely ours. Can you identify the source?" Laura asked, moving closer to the displays. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Yes, and that is why we have a problem. The signal is coming from a ship. A big ship. Military-grade weapons signature. I have not seen readings like this in our historical records since the Golden Age fleet was decommissioned." Nicole walked over, her medical uniform crisp and clean. But her face showed worry. "That ship has been in space for 2 centuries. The people on board, if there are people, they would be very different from us. They would not know what has happened to humanity. They would not know about the erasure." Laura nodded. She had read Daniel's report that he had sent through secure channels. The entire human species had been deliberately removed from galactic history. It was a truth so terrible that it seemed impossible. But it was true. And now a military vessel from before the erasure was returning. "We need to contact Daniel Cooper," Laura said. "He needs to know about this before anyone else does." She used the secure communication line, a channel so old and so buried in outdated protocols that the Galactic Council monitoring systems never even looked at it. Daniel answered within seconds. "I have detected the signal," Daniel said immediately. His voice was strained and tired. "The USS Valiant. It is coming home. Do we respond?" Laura asked. "Not yet," Daniel said. "I need time to inform the scattered human communities. If word gets out to the Galactic Council before we are ready, they will move to intercept that ship. And they will not know it is human. They will see it as a threat." Laura understood. A military vessel appearing from unknown space with no identification would be seen as an invasion threat. The Galactic Council would mobilize its fleet. There would be violence. "How long do we have?" Laura asked. "The signal is strong, but the ship is still far away. 36 hours, maybe more. But we have to move fast." Laura cut the connection and turned to Marcus. "Boost the signal through the old human communication network. Use every channel we have. Get word to all human settlements. Tell them the Valiant is returning. Tell them to prepare." For the next 12 hours, the communication center erupted into chaos. Humans across dozens of planets and stations received the message. Some celebrated. Others panicked. A few wanted to hide from the alien galaxy and hoped the Valiant would never arrive. Political factions within human leadership began arguing. The civilian government wanted to inform the Galactic Council immediately. The military wanted to keep it secret and prepare defenses. The religious groups debated whether the Valiant's return was a blessing or a curse. Everyone had an opinion, and no one agreed on what should be done. Laura's superior officer, Admiral Kenneth Price, transmitted an order to suppress the signal and arrest anyone spreading the word. He believed that revealing humanity's military capability would only draw unwanted attention from the galactic powers. But Laura refused. She gathered her entire team and made a decision. "We continue broadcasting," she said firmly. "The Galactic Council will find out about this ship eventually. When they do, we need humanity to be united and ready. We cannot hide from our own future." Marcus looked at her with respect and fear. Disobeying a direct military order was treason. "Ma'am, that will end your career," he said quietly. "I know," Laura replied. "But the alternative is worse. Our species has been forgotten for 200 years. We have a chance to reclaim our place in history. I'm not going to let fear stop us. Nicole put her hand on Laura's shoulder. Then we are with you, she said. And Marcus nodded in agreement. 3 hours later, Galactic Communication Networks detected the incoming signal. The analysis teams on the major worlds began tracking the source. The Galactic Council Security Force dispatched a military fleet to investigate the anomaly. Laura watched the reports come in. Alien warships, dozens of them, moving toward the coordinates where the USS Valiant was approaching. They did not know what they were attacking. They only knew that something was moving through their space that they could not identify. The message came from the Council Command Center, broadcast across every monitored frequency. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be destroyed. This is your only warning. And from the USS Valiant, returning from the void after 2 centuries, came a response in a voice no living alien had heard in generations. This is USS Valiant, United Earth Space Fleet, requesting docking coordinates and safe passage. We seek to return home. We seek to return to humanity. The Galactic Council fell silent. A voice from the past. A ship from a species they had all forgotten. And they had no idea what they were about to do. Laura stood up from her station and looked at her team. Lock all doors. Prepare for emergency protocols. The galaxy is about to remember humanity exists. And they will not know how to respond. In the next few hours, everything would change. The forgotten were returning. And the galaxy would have to face what it had done. The USS Valiant cut through space like a ghost returning from the dead. The ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, with armor plating that showed the scars of 200 years of travel through unknown regions. Weapons batteries lined the hull, ancient and powerful. The vessel had once been the pride of human military engineering. Captain Robert Hayes stood on the bridge and looked at the approaching fleet on the main display. His face was hard and weathered from years of command. He had been the captain of the USS Valiant for the entire journey into uncharted space. He had grown old watching the stars, and he had grown weary of exploring a universe that seemed to have no end. The ship's crew was small now, only a few hundred people left from the original crew of 10,000. Many had died. Some had been born during the journey. The population had survived by careful management and the hope that one day they would find a place to call home. Now they were returning to known space. The sensors showed habitable planets and developed civilizations. But something was wrong. The frequencies used by the Galactic Council did not match the ones in the old databases. The ships that approached them were newer, more advanced. The galaxy had not waited for the Valiant to return. A message came through the communication system. The voice was harsh and demanding and spoke in a language that the ship's computers translated instantly. Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. You are trespassing in restricted space. Power down your weapons and submit to inspection. Hayes turned to his communications officer, a woman named Sarah who had been born on the ship and had never seen a human world. Send our designation and request safe passage to human space, he commanded. Sarah input the message. The reply came back within seconds. There is no human space registered in any known territories. Your designation does not match any existing database. You have 30 seconds to power down all weapons or you will be fired upon. Hayes felt something cold in his chest. Something was very wrong indeed. In 30 seconds, his ship would be under attack. His crew was ready to fight. They had trained for this since leaving Earth's orbit. But they had hoped not to have to prove themselves through violence. Then another transmission came, this one on an old frequency that Hayes had not expected to hear. It was scrambled through outdated channels, hidden from the Galactic Council's monitoring systems. USS Valiant, This is Ambassador Daniel Cooper on Kepler Station. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. There has been a situation. Humanity has been removed from galactic records. The species approaching you do not know you are human. Do not attack. Hayes leaned back in his command chair. Removed from galactic records. That was not possible. But the evidence was clear. The fleet approaching them did not know the Valiant was a human ship. How much time until they opened fire? He asked his tactical officer. 12 seconds, came the response. Hayes made a decision in that moment. A decision that would define everything that followed. He thought of the people on his ship. He thought of the children who had been born in space. He thought of the crew members who had given their entire lives to the hope of coming home. He sent a new message on all frequencies, including the old human channel and the modern Galactic Council channels. His voice was calm and clear. This is Captain Robert Hayes of the United Earth Space Fleet. The USS Valiant is not a threat. We are explorers and scientists and soldiers. We come in peace, but we are prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. I am powering down our weapons. I will not attack unless attacked. The bridge went silent. Hayes had given the order to power down the ship's weapon systems, leaving the Valiant vulnerable to any attack. His officers stared at him with a mixture of trust and fear. The countdown reached 0. No weapons fired. Instead, another message came through. This one from the fleet commander, a being called Vex, who spoke with ancient authority. Captain Hayes, I have verified your ship's configuration against historical records from over 200 years ago. The USS Valiant is real. Humanity is real. But your species has been erased from our collective memory. This is a situation that requires immediate intervention at the highest levels of the Galactic Council. You will maintain position and await further instructions. Hayes did not trust this situation, but he had already chosen the path of peace. Daniel Cooper's voice came through the secure channel again. Captain, I am transferring all the information you need about what has happened to humanity. Read it carefully. The galaxy forgot us, but we have not forgotten ourselves. The files came through the communication system. Hayes assigned reading duties to his senior officers while he continued to monitor the approaching fleet. The Galactic Council's military force surrounded the Valiant, weapons ready but not firing. It was a standoff. Laura Summers' voice suddenly joined the communication channel. Captain Hayes, this is Captain Laura Summers, new Terra Defense Force. I am coordinating human defensive positions across all worlds. We have prepared military installations to support you if necessary. But I am also hoping we can resolve this peacefully. Hayes listened as the human captain explained the situation. 200 years. An entire species forgotten. A deliberate erasure from galactic history. It seemed impossible, but all the evidence pointed to the truth. As he read the files, Hayes began to understand. Humanity had been a threat to the established order of the galaxy. Young, aggressive, innovative. The Galactic Council had decided to eliminate the threat not through warfare, but through erasure. Through making humans disappear from history itself. It was a cruelty that he had not expected. A Galactic Council representative named Meridian opened a direct communication channel. The being on the screen was tall and crystalline and spoke with the authority of someone who had ruled for a very long time. Captain Hayes, the situation you have discovered is deeply troubling to us. It appears that certain members of the Galactic Council took action 200 years ago without proper authorization. The USS Valiant's arrival has forced this hidden matter into the open. Humanity will not be harmed. That is the guarantee of the Galactic Council. But Hayes was not sure he could trust this guarantee. The galaxy had forgotten humanity once. Why should he believe it would not happen again? I need guarantees. Hayes said firmly. I need the Galactic Council to acknowledge human existence in all records. I need compensation for 200 years of isolation and erasure. And I need the humans on this world to be restored to full status and rights within the galactic community. Meridian paused. These are demands that will take time to process through proper procedures. Then we have time, Hayes said, because I am not moving this ship or my people until humanity is no longer forgotten. The bridge of the USS Valiant fell into focused silence. The ship hung in space, surrounded by the military force of the Galactic Council. And in that moment, the past finally caught up with the future. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would have to decide what to do about it. The diplomatic chamber was designed to be neutral ground. The walls were white and smooth. The table was long and could seat representatives from dozens of species. Soft light came from panels in the ceiling. The room was meant to inspire calm and rational discussion. But there was nothing calm or rational happening inside it, Captain. Robert Hayes sat at the table and presented the history of humanity to the Galactic Council. He spoke about Earth, about the first human space flights, about the struggle to develop technology to survive in a hostile universe, about the dreams of a young species that wanted to claim its place among the stars. He told them about the USS Valiant's mission. 2 centuries ago, humanity had nearly destroyed itself in war. The most powerful nations fought each other for resources and power. Thousands of people died. The planet itself was scarred by weapons and pollution. Humanity faced extinction not from outside forces, but from its own violence. The Valiant was built as a last hope. It would travel beyond known space to find new worlds. It would explore territories that no other species had mapped. And it would search for technology or knowledge that could help humanity avoid destruction. The crew volunteered knowing they might never return. They left Earth behind in order to save it. 200 years we traveled, Hayes said, his voice heavy with the weight of history. We found new worlds. We discovered strange phenomena. We learned secrets about the universe that are written in our databases. And we believed the time had come to return home and share our knowledge with the galaxy. We believed that a united galactic community would want to learn from what we had found. He paused. We did not know we had been erased. Daniel Cooper stood at the other side of the chamber and presented the evidence of the conspiracy. He showed the tampered records. He showed the altered databases. He showed the systematic removal of humanity from every significant file in the Galactic Council's archives. But more importantly, he showed the reasoning. A hidden memo from a council meeting 200 years ago. The memo explained that humanity was a threat. The species was too young, too aggressive, too willing to fight. Their expansion was too rapid. Their innovation was too dangerous. Left unchecked, humanity might challenge the established power structure. So they made a decision. Rather than wage open war, they would erase humanity from history. They would remove them from records. They would cut them off from trade routes and communication. And over time, the galaxy would forget they ever existed. This was not defense, Daniel said, his voice shaking with anger. This was genocide. You did not kill humans with weapons. You killed us with forgetting. The council chamber erupted. Some representatives denied involvement. Some claimed they had no knowledge of the conspiracy. Some argued that it had been necessary to maintain peace in the galaxy. And some, a smaller group, demanded justice for what had been done. Vex, the ancient archivist, stood and revealed his knowledge. He confirmed that he remembered humanity. He had been excluded from the secret council meeting, but he had noticed the changes afterward. He had said nothing because he was afraid. Fear had kept him silent for 200 years. I am ashamed, Vex said simply. I failed in my duty to preserve truth. I allowed history to be rewritten. and I did nothing to stop it. A representative from the Helian species spoke. We knew nothing of this. The Helian have always valued knowledge and trade. If we had known humanity was being erased, we would have opposed it. This conspiracy does not represent our values. Others agreed. Not all species had been part of the decision. Many had simply accepted the Council's actions without questioning them. But that acceptance was itself a form of guilt. Then Meridian, the Council leader, stood and confessed his knowledge. He had been part of the decision to erase humanity. He had believed then that it was necessary. But over 200 years, his perspective had changed. We were wrong, Meridian said. His words fell like stones into still water. We made a choice based on fear instead of understanding. We treated a young species as a problem to be eliminated rather than a people to be known. And we hid this decision from our own communities and our own peoples. That is the real crime. We hid the truth. Daniel turned to face Meridian directly. What happens now? Do we pursue justice? Do we demand compensation? Do we seek revenge against those who conspired to erase us? Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. No, he said firmly. We do not. Because if we demand revenge, we become like those who erased us. We become people motivated by fear and anger. And we teach the galaxy nothing from our suffering. Daniel stared at him. They destroyed 200 years of human development. They cut us off from the galaxy. They made us irrelevant. Yes, Hayes agreed. They did those things. And we can spend the rest of our lives being bitter about what was done to us. Or we can look forward to what we can build together. He turned to address the full council. Humanity asks for recognition. We ask to be restored to the galactic records. We ask for the conspiracy to be fully investigated and those responsible to face appropriate justice in your legal systems. And we ask for the opportunity to rebuild our relationship with the galaxy based on truth instead of lies. But we offer something in return, Hayes continued. We offer our knowledge. We offer our technology. We offer our friendship to those species willing to treat us as equals. And we offer a lesson learned through terrible experience that erasing people from history is not a solution. It is a crime, and the galaxy should never allow it again. The council chamber fell silent. The old arguments for and against human erasure seemed small now. The decision had been made to expose the truth, to acknowledge what had been done, to move forward with recognition rather than continued denial. Over the following days, the Galactic Council voted to restore humanity to its records. They voted to investigate the conspiracy. They voted to establish reparations for the damaged human settlements and isolated colonies. And they voted to formally welcome the USS Valiant and its crew as representatives of humanity in the galactic community. But Hayes knew that formal votes and documents could not undo 200 years of suffering. It would take time for the galaxy to trust humanity again. And it would take time for humanity to trust the galaxy. Still, the first step had been taken. The forgotten were no longer forgotten. And that was enough to begin with. 5 years had passed since the USS Valiant emerged from the void. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. And the future had become something new and unexpected. Admiral Robert Hayes walked through the new human embassy in the Galactic Council's central station. The building was made of materials that humans had helped design, combining human engineering with alien technology. The walls displayed the history of humanity, including the 200 years that had been erased. That history was never hidden again. The embassy was busy with activity. Human representatives from across the scattered colonies worked alongside Galactic Council officials. Trade agreements were being negotiated. Cultural exchanges were being planned. Human scientists worked with Helian researchers on joint projects. It was a scene that would have been impossible 5 years ago. Captain Laura Summers was now Admiral of the First Human Fleet. She commanded a military force that protected human interests in the galaxy while maintaining peace. She was respected by both human commanders and alien military leaders. The fear that had once existed between humans and the galactic powers was fading, replaced by mutual respect earned through action rather than demanded through intimidation. Daniel Cooper was the ambassador to the Galactic Council, a position of real authority. He served on committees that made decisions affecting billions of lives. His voice mattered. Humanity's voice mattered. But there was a place that mattered more. A place where memory was kept and preserved. The Memorial of the Forgotten was built on a small moon orbiting a planet in the outer rim. It was constructed from materials gathered from all the species in the galactic community, each piece a symbol of respect. The memorial honored the 200 years when humanity had been erased. It honored the colonies that struggled to survive in isolation. It honored the children who were born and never knew they belonged to a galactic civilization. And it honored those who died during that long darkness. Robert Hayes stood in front of the memorial with Admiral Laura Summers and Ambassador Daniel Cooper. Behind them were representatives from every galactic species. The ceremony was being broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of people, human and alien, would witness this moment. Nicole Grant, now the director of the Combined Medical Research Institute, placed a hand on Hayes' shoulder. She had worked with alien scientists to develop medicine that could help species that had never met before. She was proof that cooperation was possible, that the barriers between species could be broken down through shared purpose. "We gather here to remember," Hayes spoke. His voice carried through speakers to every corner of the galaxy. "We remember the 200 years when humanity was forgotten. We remember the families separated by circumstances beyond their control. We remember the lives that could have been different, if not for one terrible decision made in secret by those who feared us." He paused, looking at the memorial that reflected light like starlight. "We gather here to acknowledge what was done. The Galactic Council has officially declared the erasure of humanity a crime against sentient life. Those responsible have faced judgment. Some were exiled. Some were removed from power. And the laws of the galaxy have been changed to prevent such an action from ever happening again." The crowd stood in silence. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of people understanding that something fundamental had changed about their universe. "But we also gather here to look forward," Hayes continued. "Humanity has learned through terrible experience what isolation means. We've learned what it feels like to be forgotten. And we will spend our existence making sure that no other species ever faces what we faced." Daniel Cooper stepped forward. "The human government officially recognizes the suffering of all peoples in the galaxy. We commit our resources and our knowledge to preventing conflict and building understanding. Where we can help, we will. Where we can learn, we will listen. And where we can stand with others against injustice, we will stand." Laura Summers spoke last. "The human military exists to protect life, not to dominate it. We will work with the military forces of other species to ensure peace. We will defend the innocent. And we will never allow a civilization to be erased again." After the ceremony, the representatives walked through the memorial. Each section told a part of human history. Some sections were dark and sad, showing the weight of those 200 years. But other sections showed human resilience. They showed colonies that thrived despite isolation. They showed art and music and scientific discovery that continued even when the galaxy had forgotten they existed. As evening fell on the memorial moon, Hayes found himself alone with his thoughts. He thought about the crew of the USS Valiant. Many had not lived to see this day. They had spent their entire lives believing they were returning to a galaxy that wanted them. They had died thinking they were coming home. But in a way, they had succeeded. Their return had forced the galaxy to face its own darkness. And from that darkness had come the possibility of something new. The USS Valiant itself had been transformed. It was no longer a military vessel. It was no longer a military vessel. Instead, it had been converted into a museum and teaching ship. Young people from every species were invited aboard to learn about human history and human culture. The ship that had been forgotten was now teaching the galaxy about what it had lost. In the human territories, colonies that had been small and struggling began to grow. Trade routes brought prosperity. Young people moved to new worlds. Human culture spread through the galaxy, not through conquest, but through genuine interest from other species, who wanted to understand this people that had been erased and had returned. But the most important change was internal. Humanity remembered who it was. It remembered the sacrifice of those who had come before. It remembered the darkness of 200 years of erasure. And it remembered that survival was not enough. The galaxy had to be better. Humans had to be better. 5 years after the Valiant returned, there was a ceremony on Earth. The first human planetary government had been established. Every human nation had joined together under one flag, united by the experience of being forgotten and the determination never to forget again. Robert Hayes stood on the steps of the Global Human Parliament, looking out at crowds of his own people. They had gathered to celebrate. But it was not a celebration of victory. It was a celebration of survival. It was a celebration of a species that had endured the worst the galaxy could do, and had chosen compassion instead of revenge. "We are human," he said, though this time he spoke only to his own people. "We were forgotten, but we are remembered now. And we will spend every day proving that the galaxy was right to welcome us home. Not because we are superior, but because we are capable of love and sacrifice and the kind of courage that comes from knowing what darkness feels like." Lavra smiled beside him. Daniel stood tall. Nicole reached over and squeezed his hand. The sun of Earth rose over the horizon, the same sun that had warmed humanity for millions of years before they ever reached for the stars. It rose on a species that had been erased and had returned. It rose on a new era of the galaxy, where no one would be forgotten again. And the USS Valiant, orbiting overhead, reflected the light of that sun as it had reflected so much else. A symbol of what was lost. A beacon of what could be found. A reminder that history belongs to those who survive long enough to tell it.